So hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are hoping that this is going to be a really interesting and exciting session for all of you. It's definitely a very different topic than what we normally do as a university, where we're going to talk less about our degree programs or our application process, but we're going to talk more about how you can prepare yourselves to be successful at university and how you can make sure that you're truly happy while you are getting your bachelor's degree education. So without further ado, I'm going to just put a couple of instructions up first, and then I'm going to hand it over to our professor, Ms. Kim Chua. So please make sure that your microphones are muted throughout the duration of the session. The chat box is open. If you have questions, feel free to type your questions in the chat box. And if you want to make any comments or remarks, please feel free to interact on the chat box. Ms. Kim Chua is going to make it interactive for you as well. So she will be asking for your responses to certain questions. Don't be shy. Make sure that you respond. That makes it more interesting and lively for all of us. All right. I hope you have a great session. Enjoy yourselves. And if you have specific questions related to Embry-Riddle or university applications, I'll be here till the very end, and I'll be happy to help you with your questions at the end of the session. Over to you, Ms. Kim.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Christy, and thank you, Ben, for making this session possible. When I was first presented with the prospect of being able to share with students about how to define one's success story, I told Christy, oh my God, this is a lovely topic to talk about, given the current times that we live in, right? So right now, things are a bit uncertain. People aren't sure what life is going to be post-COVID. And students, I mean, I work with a lot of students day in, day out, and a lot of them are just trying to make it on a daily basis. So to me, this is really much at the core of the work that I do at Embry-Riddle Asia as Director of Student Success. It is my vision of my office to make sure that every student that passes through my classes, that has the chance to be in the school, knows at least how to define their own success story. So you might ask, why storytelling, right? Why is it that we tell stories? What do stories bring to our lives? So stories are the way we make sense of our lives. I once read a very famous saying from a psychologist, and he said that to tell a story is to take a moral stance. All of us walk around with stories about our lives, why choices were made, why things went wrong, why we treated someone in a certain way, or why someone treated us in a certain way. But what happens when the stories we tell about ourselves are incomplete or not real versions of what we want for ourselves? I don't mean to say that we mislead. Most of what people tell of their life stories or success stories is really from their current points of view, depending on what they emphasize or minimize, what they leave in, what they leave out, what they want me to see or what they want you to see. They tell their stories in a particular way. So I think that it's really important. It's really important that if we are able to define our stories, if we are able to edit our stories, if we are able to pinpoint our stories, then this is where the magic begins. So this might not be a surprise to you. This is one of the best films I've ever watched, but unfortunately, I don't have the time to show the entire clip. So this scene, just to set the scene, okay? If you've ever watched The Pursuit of Happiness, In this scene, Chris is a salesman who's struggling to make ends meet. His girlfriend has just left him, and he's effectively a single father trying to make ends meet with his 5-year-old son, with him. So his determination to succeed leads him to land an interview for an internship program at a stock brokerage firm. Just before the interview, he had to spend a night in the jailhouse because he didn't have the money to pay for a parking fine. He didn't have the money. He simply didn't have the money. So he opted to spend the night in the jailhouse. However, the interview is at 10:15, and he just barely made it to the interview, right, and ran all the way from the jailhouse to the interview. So I'm going to play this very, very short clip right now. And I want you to listen very carefully as he narrates his story. And I want you to be able to pick out the qualities that we can discern, or we can observe from Chris in this very short story that he shares with his interviewer. Okay, just a minute.
Chris Gardner.
Chris Gardner. How are you? Good morning. Chris Gardner. Chris Gardner. Good to see you again. Chris Gardner. Pleasure. I've been sitting out there for the last half hour trying to come up with a story that would explain my being here dressed like this. And I wanted to come up with a story that would demonstrate qualities that I'm sure you all admire here, like earnestness or diligence and team playing to something. And I couldn't think of anything. So the truth is, I was arrested for failure to pay parking tickets.
Parking tickets?
And I ran all the way here from the Polk station, the police station.
What were you doing before you were arrested?
I was painting my apartment.
Is it dry now?
I hope so.
Jay says you're pretty determined.
Oh, he's been waiting outside the front of the building with some 40-pound gizmo for over a month.
He said you're smart.
I like to think so.
And you want to learn this business.
Yes, sir, I want to learn this business.
Have you already started learning on your own?
Absolutely.
Jay,
Yes, sir.
how many times have you seen Chris?
No, I don't know. One too many, apparently.
Is he ever dressed like this?
No. No. Jacket and tie.
First in your class? In school? High school?
Yes, sir.
How many in the class?
12. It was a small town.
I'll say.
But I was also first in my radar class in the Navy, and that was a class of 20.
We don't have time for the entire clip, but I think I've shown you enough to share with you the significance of this story. At first, he started out wanting to tell a story that demonstrated all those positive qualities that interviewers typically look for. But instead, he decided he's better off telling the truth. And then as the interview proceeded and progressed, you notice that the interviewers were also very sharp in picking up qualities that he demonstrated via his behavior and via his responses to the questions that they posed him, right? So this was one of the most inspiring films that I've ever watched growing up. And also, I introduced that film to my students because I think it's very important that everyone has a story and everyone knows what you stand for and what you don't stand for.
Can I say something?
Okay, and then I'm going to move to the next slide. So today, what I want to do over here is to show you how to design and define your own story, starting with your choice of higher education, career, personal values, and priorities in life. Given the current and certain times that we live in. But of course, before I can even do that, I would like to pose some questions to you today. And this is just, a brief exploration. I think that it is important that we allocate some time in our lives to think about this. And right now you're at the crossroads of your life, right? I think it's probably important that you think about your personal definition of success. How can I create a life that's true to myself? How do I create a vision? How do I get people to see me for who I truly am, right? So a big question right now is, what does success mean to you? Is it social status? Is it wealth? Is it fame? Is it happiness? Or is it simply, I don't know yet? So if you have time and if you would like to share with me your definition of success, please pop them into the chat box. And at the end of the presentation, I'll share them with everybody else, okay? The truth is, the common dictionary definition of the word success reads something like this: to achieve a high position, make a lot of money, be admired a great deal, blah, 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 right? But I think the late Zig Ziglar, who is actually one of the most respected modern day experts on personal success, professional success, motivation, argues that success, being successful, means having a balance of success stories across the many areas of our life. He even says that it's not possible to be considered a success in your business life if your home life is in complete shambles. So personally, I tend to agree with what he says. I do believe that it is not possible to be successful in one area and allow the rest of the areas of our life to lapse. So at this point, I'm going to share my own story. I promise it won't take you too much time. And more importantly is the process that I went about in creating my own story. So in creating my own story for this evening, I'm thinking about things like, okay, what material should I include? Is the protagonist moving forward, going in circles? Who are the other characters in the story? Are they important? Are they a distraction? Does the plot reveal a key message? Is there a theme that runs through consistently? And what I've noticed in the whole process of coming up and creating my own life story is that my story, like many people's story, tends to circle around two key themes: the life before success and the life after success. Okay, so for most of my life, I had a very narrow definition of what success meant. It involved people knowing your name, having enough financial stability to be able to live out a certain kind of lifestyle, right? If you have ever watched Crazy Rich Asians, that is something that is the Asian dream, all right? It wasn't a definition that I opted in, quite frankly, but it was the definition that has been conditioned to me, like most Asian children, from childhood, right? Through, whether is it through culture, or is it through films, through magazines, or even through, quite succinctly, through the people in our life. And I believed it. So in the very early part of my life, I've had the very good luck and fortune to meet very good teachers, mentors, role models who taught me the importance of clarity and staying grounded through direct intervention and just giving me access to their vast experience. Now, as a teacher myself, I now have the opportunity to combine what I've learned about my own life, integrate the lessons, that I've had in my life and paying it forward with students whom I currently teach. So let's go straight to the core of today's webinar. So what is the secret to success? How do we even define success? Why do we pursue success? Now, almost always when you ask anyone, why do we pursue success? If you dig hard enough, the replies that you typically get is happiness. So the path of success leading to happiness is conditioned into us from an early age. Since the Industrial Revolution, it's always been success first, happiness later. So for generations, we've pushed ourselves, we've pushed our children, we've pushed our students to succeed in this realm of things, right? Into this system of scores-driven academia, right? And in that process, I'm not saying it's a bad process. It is a process that yields a certain set of outcomes. But in that scheme of things, we also forget the softer skills in life and really negating the bigger picture. And the story doesn't just stop there, right? And once we leave the safe security blanket of schools and enter the world of work, we are also told time and again that if we focus and work hard enough, we compete hard enough, and if we keep climbing the ladder of our chosen profession, then we will be a success. And the promised pot of gold, whether it's the job, the home, the car, the partner of our dreams, will be at the end of the rainbow waiting for us. And ultimately, that will be then we will find happiness. But what if we got it wrong? Okay? What if happiness precedes success and not the other way around? I'm not saying this just for fun. I'm not just saying this just to be cheeky, but also neuroscience and studies of positive psychology prove that happiness is a key driver and precursor of success. And we have 2 decades worth of research backing this up. One main reason, I'm just going to give you one reason, and that is positive feelings make the brain work better. Positive emotions triggers the release of serotonin, dopamine, which allows you to enhance your motor control, motivation, memory, problem solving, mental focus, clarity, and also, guess what? The ability to process multiple concepts, even abstract ones, simultaneously. So if you think about it, positive thinking, happiness, really can make you more successful. So you stand a better chance to achieve success if you are positive about it, right? So in Embry-Riddle, I teach this class called Unit 101. In short, it basically means college success, and I'll share with you another story about how I created this course from scratch. So this course is a course that is only offered to freshmen. All right, they take it in the first term, first year, and first week over a course of 6 weeks. And I think more importantly here, it's not so much about what I teach in the class yet, but it's more about the story of how I created this course and what is the underlying philosophy, that inspires this class. So in 2018, I had the privilege of living in Hawaii, moving to Hawaii and living in Hawaii, and learning about ancient Polynesian navigational wisdoms. So for those who are not familiar with the ancient Polynesian wayfinding method, it is a technique whereby the ancient Polynesians could find their way to islands in the sea using only their 5 senses, by reading the waves, the shapes of the clouds, the directions of the birds, and even the constellations in the night sky. Personally, I was intrigued. I mean, coming from aviation, I was very intrigued because everything is automated, right? But this is such a primitive and brilliant way of finding your way. I'm also very inspired by their ability to face the open, turbulent sea, and also their inspiration to travel out of their respective safe islands, just in the spirit of true exploration. More importantly, I'm very struck by their ability to be able to discern, to be able to tell islands that are beyond the horizon, islands that are not even, that can't be seen with the naked eye. And how do they do that? Okay, and let me tell you the secret to that. True great navigators trained in the Polynesian way can identify the presence of distant islands simply by watching, feeling the reverberation of waves across the hull of the canoe. And and they have told me that in all the islands in the Pacific Ocean, every single island has its own refractive pattern. It's like it's very distinctive. So every island has its own refractive pattern. It's like fingerprints, right? So all of us are distinguished by our fingerprints. So are islands. I found this extremely, extremely fascinating. So when I started this course, I took back the learnings from my time in Hawaii and tried to apply. And I told myself, how can I eloquently and elegantly package this into a class for my students? I mean, if you think about it, life is like an odyssey across the ocean. It is scary, but it is also very exciting. As the captain of your life, as the captain of your ship, you now possess the power to create, to design, to live out your own odyssey. In short, I always tell my students, your odyssey always starts with design. So I always ask them, are you living a life that is designed by yourself? Or are you simply living a life like everyone else? For those who are not acquainted with design thinking, it is a process for creative problem solving with a human-centered emphasis. So the human is in the middle of the process. When we use design thinking, what we are doing is putting together what is available to you, what is sustainable in the long run, and what is economically viable. Of course, at the core of it, it has to be something that you want. So design thinking is the mental model that all my students adopt in addressing the different challenges which I have set for them in the course. So they take on various challenges in the 6 weeks that they are with me. And so in the class that I teach, I only have one simple formula that I'm going to share with you today. And that is self-awareness plus vision plus situational awareness equals success. Okay. And quite frankly, anchoring this formula are the 6 pillars that I think will help them navigate the winds of change. My core pillars are, I place a lot of emphasis on self-learning, which comes down to self-mastery and design thinking. I also emphasize a lot on social learning as well. That will almost always lead them to personal success. And then I cannot negate the importance of achieving professional success as well. And that means having the ability, the soft skills to be able to work in a team, to be able to collaborate, to be able to take ownership, and also having the emotional competencies like grit, resilience, and knowing about your industry so that you're more employable and more valuable as an employee. So a common question I often get from my very cheeky students is, how does one even develop situational awareness? How do we know what we don't know? And the truth is we don't know what we don't know. So I always tell them, all good sailors will tell you one thing, and that is to look for the winds and where they are blowing in order to steer their boats or where to go, right? In this specific context, I want you to imagine the key trends and changes sweeping across the education experience. For example, in higher education, I'm pretty sure you know by now that the trends that you see in higher education such as travel bans, social distancing measures, simply means that face-to-face learning activities, physical learning may be, affected. Some institutions have not even begun to resume physical learning. And it is a very real scenario that many institutions may opt to an all online proposition for the rest of 2021, or require a blended learning kind of arrangement. And that's what I've adopted in my class, a blended kind of approach. This also means that there is more sophisticated online learning tools, instruction, interaction, testing, and examinations. So as a student, you have to consider questions like, how will this impact you? What can you do? How can I even get started? So in the first week of class, I always share with my students, share with me, how can you ensure that you have strategies in place to make sure that you're just as successful online as you would be offline. And almost you'll be surprised that some of the strategies that may work for you offline may not always work for you online. So I would like to hear from this group, what are some of the strategies that you have used, you've created for yourself in making sure that you're just as successful as an online learner as you would an offline learner? So my students will tell me, creating a weekly schedule, watching lectures, and making sure that they have a community of friends that they study with to keep them on track. And also they are very, very committed to their success. So the next question that I often ask my students would be, what scares you most about starting your higher education journey, especially in this current state of things right now, in the pandemic times? So what scares you most? And my students would tell me, well, the scariest thing about studying my higher education in the pandemic is the uncertainty of everything all, right? Everything is so uncertain. I'm not sure if I can get employed. I'm not sure if my degree will be valued as other disciplines, right? So these are some of the fears. And I think it's very important to acknowledge fears, because courage is not the lack of fear. Courage is the acknowledgement of fear and still doing it. All right. So my students grapple with two types of winds blowing across their lives. First is the trends that's sweeping across higher education, which everyone is affected. But more importantly, in Embry-Riddle, one of the other winds that's also sweeping across their lives is the industry is going through one of the greatest crises, given the border closures, drastic drop in air traffic, airlines that are not doing so well, passenger fears of getting infected on board. We now know that's not true. And also vaccines hesitancy. So again, same thing, they go through the same process. I ask them to consider questions about how this will impact you as a future graduate. What can you do about it? How can you even get started on it? So the thing is, I can tell you that it is a very scary world that we're currently living in. And I don't have the answers to all the big questions to the scheme of things, but I have one last story to share with you before I end the presentation. And that is, if you speak with any experienced Hawaiian surfer, or navigator who's trained in the ancient art of wayfinding, they can name, follow, track 220 stars in the sky. There are 220, and they know each and every one of them. And it's so important they know each and every one of them, because it is a means to help them find their bearings in the open sea. So like me, I asked my coach, the 220 of them. So which one is the most important one? Which one? And he said, your North Star. Because your vision of success is your North Star, and that always leads the way. in a very philosophical way of things, I began to reflect on what he said and shared with me. We can't really, and we can never fully anticipate life or plan your life, because those defining and life-defining and life-changing moments that have yet to arrive, we can't plan for those things. We can only prepare to the best of our ability, and we can only trust in the process. And also bearing in mind, honoring our priorities, and paying homage to our vision of success. Because at the end of the day, your North Star is what will provide you with the inspiration to fuel your greatest actions. Okay, all that is great in life, it was fueled by dreams, by conviction, by inspiration. Just think of the Mars rover Perseverance, the stuff of our dreams. If man didn't dare to dream, we wouldn't have made it to Mars. So I think the most important thing to take away, and I shall end this with a beautiful Hawaiian proverb, and that is, in Hawaii, we say that you can't stop the waves from coming, but you can always learn how to surf. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for taking time to listen to my stories. So over back to you, Krishti.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was actually an extremely interesting and very different topic. I really enjoyed myself hearing about your experiences and anecdotes, of course, as well. So thank you so much for this. And we are going to end the session here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you again soon in any of our events in the future. Bye-bye.